What would happen if dedicating just 60 focused minutes every single day had the power to completely shift the trajectory of your entire existence? I know that probably sounds too simple to be true. You're likely thinking there's no possible way that carving out one small hour from your day could genuinely make any real difference. After all, we're talking about just 60 minutes out of the 24 hours you have available. That's barely 4% of your entire day. 4% doesn't sound like nearly enough to create meaningful change, does it? But here's what I discovered through my own painful experience, and it's something that fundamentally changed everything for me. Most people aren't failing because they lack talent or intelligence or even opportunities. They're failing because they're spreading themselves impossibly thin, attempting to do everything at once, and ultimately accomplishing nothing that actually matters. They're stuck in this endless cycle of busyness that feels productive, but leads absolutely nowhere. Let me take you back to where I was just a few years ago. I was working this job that was slowly draining the life out of me. Every morning, I'd wake up with this crushing weight on my chest, knowing I had to drag myself back to that same desk, stare at that same screen, repeat the same meaningless tasks over and over. I felt trapped in this endless cycle where nothing ever changed, where every day blurred into the next, where I was just existing rather than actually living. The alarm would go off and immediately this sense of dread would wash over me. Not because the job was particularly difficult. It wasn't. That was almost the worst part. It was easy, predictable, safe. But it was also slowly killing something inside me. That spark I used to have, that excitement about what life could be, it was fading a little more every single day. I'd sit in traffic on my commute, thinking about all the things I wished I was doing instead. I'd walk into that office building and feel my shoulders slump, feel my energy drain, feel myself becoming smaller. 8 hours would crawl by. Then I'd sit in traffic again on the way home, exhausted not from hard work, but from the soul-crushing monotony of it all. But I had all these dreams, you know. I wanted to start my own business. I wanted to learn new skills that could open doors for me. I wanted to get in shape and feel strong and healthy again. I wanted to build something meaningful with my life, something that mattered, something I could be proud of. The problem was, I kept telling myself I didn't have time for any of it. Between my job that consumed 8 to 9 hours when you counted the commute, my responsibilities at home, the basic tasks of just maintaining existence like grocery shopping and cleaning and paying bills, by the time I got home I was exhausted, completely drained. I'd collapse on the couch and tell myself I'd start tomorrow, when I had more energy, more time, more of everything. Tomorrow never came. Tomorrow always turned into next week. Next week always became next month. Next month somehow became next year. And the years just kept slipping by, while I stayed stuck in the exact same place, dreaming about a different life but never actually doing anything to create it. Then one day something clicked. I was scrolling through social media, which I did way too much of back then, watching other people accomplish incredible things, people starting businesses, people getting in amazing shape, people learning new languages, traveling the world, writing books, creating art. And I felt this wave of frustration wash over me that was so intense, it almost took my breath away. I realized I'd been making the same excuses for years, literally years. I'd been saying I didn't have time for what felt like forever. And in all that time, I hadn't moved 1 single inch closer to any of my goals. Not 1 inch. I was in the exact same place I'd been 3 years earlier, 5 years earlier, maybe even 10 years earlier, if I was being completely honest with myself. That realization hit me like a punch to the gut. I was 31 years old, and I had nothing to show for the last decade of my life except a job I hated, a bank account that was barely staying afloat, and a growing sense of panic that I was wasting my one chance at life. That's when I made a decision that sounds almost ridiculously simple. I decided to commit just 1 hour every single day to working on what actually mattered to me. Not someday when I had more time. Not when conditions were perfect. Not when I felt motivated or inspired or ready. 1 hour. Every day. No exceptions, no excuses, no negotiating with myself. I started waking up 1 hour earlier than I had to. That's it. Just 60 minutes before I needed to get ready for work. And in that hour, before the rest of the world woke up, before my phone started buzzing, before anyone could ask anything of me, I worked on building the business I'd been dreaming about for years but never started. The first few days were brutal. I'm not going to lie to you. My body fought against waking up earlier with everything it had. I'd been a night owl my entire life, staying up late scrolling through my phone or watching shows, then dragging myself out of bed at the last possible moment. Trying to wake up at 5 in the morning felt like fighting against my entire nature. My mind invented every excuse imaginable for why I should just hit snooze and go back to sleep. You're too tired. You need your rest. You can start tomorrow. One day won't make a difference. You deserve to sleep in. The business can wait. But I pushed through anyway, forcing myself out of bed even when every fiber of my being was screaming at me to stay under the warm covers. That first morning I sat at my desk at 5:15, coffee in hand, staring at my laptop, and honestly I had no idea what I was even doing. I'd spent so long talking about starting a business that when I actually sat down to do it, I felt paralyzed. Where do you even begin? What's the first step? How do you turn a vague dream into something real? But I did something. Anything. I researched business ideas. I made notes. I watched tutorials. That first hour felt clumsy and unproductive. But I showed up. That's what mattered. Week 1 passed. It was hard. Really hard. Every morning was a battle. But I kept showing up. Then week 2 came. Still hard, but something was starting to shift. My body was beginning to adjust to the new schedule. Waking up early was becoming slightly less painful. By week 3, something genuinely started to change. That 1 hour had become sacred to me. It wasn't just time anymore. It was my time. The only hour in my entire day where I wasn't answering to anyone else, where I wasn't fulfilling someone else's agenda, where I was actually building something that belonged to me, something that could potentially change my life. I started to feel different during that hour. More focused, more energized, more alive than I felt during the rest of my day. It was like that hour was the only time I was actually being myself, working on what I cared about, instead of just playing a role to earn a paycheck. After 30 days, I looked back at what I'd accomplished, and I was genuinely shocked. In just 30 hours of focused, intentional work, I'd made more progress on my business than I had in the previous 3 years of waiting for the perfect moment. I'd created a basic website. I'd developed my first product. I'd started building an email list. I'd actually done real, tangible things instead of just thinking about doing them someday. Think about that for a second. 30 hours. That's less time than most people spend watching television in a single month. That's less time than people spend scrolling social media, or playing video games, or doing things that don't move their lives forward in any meaningful way. And yet those 30 hours had produced tangible, real results that could potentially change everything for me. But here's what really changed everything. And this is the part I didn't expect. It wasn't just about the business progress, though that was significant. That 1 hour started bleeding into the rest of my day in the most unexpected and powerful ways. Because I was waking up early and accomplishing something meaningful before most people even opened their eyes, I carried this momentum with me throughout the entire day. I felt different walking into my job, more capable, more confident, like I was finally taking control of my life instead of just letting life happen to me. Like I had a secret that nobody else knew about. My co-workers would come in complaining about Monday or dragging themselves through Wednesday, and I'd be sitting there knowing that I'd already put in an hour on my own dreams before they even woke up. That feeling was intoxicating. It made the job more bearable because I knew it wasn't forever. I was actively working on my way out. I started noticing other changes too. I had more energy throughout the day, which seemed counterintuitive since I was sleeping less. But I think having purpose, having something I genuinely cared about that I was making progress on, that gave me energy that no amount of sleep could provide. I was more focused at my actual job, weirdly enough. Because I wasn't spending mental energy resenting where I was or daydreaming about where I wished I was. I'd already done my real work for the day. Everything else was just filling time until I could wake up tomorrow and do it again. My relationships improved because I wasn't walking around angry and frustrated all the time. I wasn't snapping at people or being irritable because I felt stuck. I had hope again. I could see a path forward. That changed everything about how I showed up in the world. 6 months in, that 1 hour per day had built the foundation of a business that was starting to generate actual income. Not a lot at first. My first sale was $17, and I literally jumped out of my chair when I saw the notification. $17 doesn't sound like much, but it represented proof. Proof that this wasn't just a fantasy. Proof that people would actually pay for what I was creating. Proof that change was possible. By month 8, I was making enough from my business that it covered my car payment. That might not sound significant, but it felt massive to me. It meant I'd created something from nothing that was now paying for a real expense in my life. 12 months in, I was able to quit that job I hated and work for myself full-time. Not because I'd suddenly found some massive chunk of time, or because everything magically fell into place, or because I got lucky. Simply because I'd committed 1 hour every single day to moving toward what I actually wanted, instead of just wishing things were different. The day I walked into my boss's office and gave my notice was surreal. I'd fantasized about that moment for so long. And when it finally happened, when I finally said the words out loud, I felt this mixture of terror and exhilaration that I'll never forget. Terror, because I was leaving the safety and predictability of a steady paycheck. Exhilaration, because I was finally free. Now let me be completely real with you about what this actually requires, because I don't want to paint some fairy tale picture where everything was easy and perfect. That 1 hour isn't magic. It's not going to transform your life just because you decide to wake up earlier or carve out time in your schedule. What matters is what you actually do with that hour. Most people waste their time because they don't have clarity about what they're actually trying to build. They hop from one thing to another, chasing whatever seems exciting in the moment, never sticking with anything long enough to see real results. They start a business idea on Monday, give up by Thursday, start learning a new skill the following week, abandon that after a few days, constantly moving but never actually going anywhere. That 1 hour only works if you're using it with absolute intention and focus. You need to decide what actually matters to you, not what sounds impressive to other people when you talk about it at parties, not what you think you should want based on what society tells you success looks like. What genuinely matters to you deep in your core. You need to get brutally honest with yourself about this. What's the one thing that if you made real progress on it over the next year would genuinely change your life? Not 5 things. Not 10 things. One thing. Because trying to do everything means you'll accomplish nothing. Maybe for you it's writing that book you've been talking about for years. You've got the idea. You've told people about it. Maybe you've even written a few pages here and there, but you've never actually committed to finishing it. 1 hour per day could produce a complete manuscript in 6 months. Maybe it's learning a skill that could change your career trajectory entirely. Programming, design, digital marketing, public speaking. Whatever skill could open doors for you that are currently closed. 1 hour per day of focused learning and practice could make you legitimately proficient in a year. Maybe it's building your physical health back to where you know it should be. You've let yourself go. You know it. You feel it every time you look in the mirror or climb a flight of stairs. 1 hour per day of intentional exercise and meal prep could completely transform your body and energy levels. Maybe it's working on a side business that could eventually replace your income and give you freedom. 1 hour per day of building, creating, marketing, connecting with customers could create a revenue stream that changes everything. Whatever it is, it needs to be clear, and it needs to be important enough that you're willing to protect that hour like your life depends on it. Because in a very real way, it does. That hour represents the difference between the life you're living and the life you could be living. Because here's what nobody tells you about commitment, and what I had to learn the hard way. The world will constantly try to steal that hour from you. Your phone will buzz with notifications that feel urgent but aren't. People will ask for favors that could wait, but they frame as emergencies. Unexpected things will come up that seem important in the moment but aren't moving you toward your goals. Your own brain will generate endless reasons why you should skip just this once. You didn't sleep well, so you need the rest. You have a busy day ahead, so you should save your energy. You've been so consistent that missing 1 day won't matter. You deserve a break. You'll do extra tomorrow to make up for it. And if you let any of those things win, if you negotiate with yourself even once, you'll be right back where you started. Because skipping once makes it easier to skip again and again. And suddenly that 1 hour disappears, and you're back to making excuses about why you don't have time to change your life. I remember this one morning about 2 months into my new routine that tested everything. I'd been up late the night before dealing with some family drama that left me emotionally drained. My brother had called at 11 at night in crisis mode, and we'd talked until almost 2 in the morning. When my alarm went off at 5, I'd had less than 3 hours of sleep. Every fiber of my being wanted to stay in bed. I actually reached over and turned off the alarm. Laid back down, closed my eyes, pulled the covers up. Told myself I'd earned a morning off after the night I'd had. Anyone would understand. But then something inside me spoke up, a voice that said if I skipped today, it would be easier to skip tomorrow, and the day after that, and eventually I'd be right back to making excuses about why I didn't have time to change my life. That voice reminded me that this was exactly the kind of moment that separated people who talk about changing their lives from people who actually do it. So I got up. I dragged myself out of bed feeling like I'd been hit by a truck. I made coffee with shaking hands. I sat at my desk with my eyes barely open, and I worked my hour. I was exhausted. My work that morning wasn't my best. My thinking wasn't sharp. But I showed up anyway. And you know what? That might have been the most important hour I ever spent, not because of what I accomplished that specific morning, but because I proved to myself that I could keep my commitment even when it was hard, even when I had every legitimate reason to skip, even when nobody would have blamed me for taking the morning off. That morning taught me something crucial. Consistency isn't about being perfect. It's not about every hour being productive and amazing. It's about showing up regardless of how you feel, regardless of what happened yesterday, regardless of what excuse your brain is generating. It's about honoring your commitment to yourself above everything else. That's the real secret behind the 1 hour that nobody talks about. It's not actually about the time or even about what you accomplish during that time. It's about who you become when you consistently show up for yourself day after day after day. It's about building trust with yourself. It's about proving that you're someone who follows through on what matters. Think about the relationships in your life. The people you trust most are the ones who consistently show up, who keep their promises, who do what they say they're going to do. You build trust in relationships through consistency over time. The same principle applies to your relationship with yourself. Every time you show up for that hour when you don't feel like it, you're making a deposit in your self-trust account. You're proving to yourself that you're reliable, that you're serious, that you're not just another person who talks about changing, but never actually does it. And that self-trust becomes the foundation for everything else in your life. Think about the math for a second, because the numbers are genuinely staggering. 1 hour per day is 7 hours per week. That's roughly 30 hours per month. That's 365 hours per year. Do you have any idea how much you could learn or build or create with 365 focused hours dedicated to something that matters to you? Let me put that in perspective. The average person watches about 4 hours of television per day. That's 1,460 hours per year of passive consumption that produces absolutely nothing. If you just redirected 1/4 of that time, 1 single hour, into active creation, into building something meaningful, the results would be life-changing. You could become conversationally fluent in a new language with 365 focused hours of study and practice. You could write an entire book, maybe even 2 books, depending on your pace. You could build a legitimate business from absolutely nothing. You could completely transform your physical health and fitness. You could develop a skill that changes your career trajectory forever. You could learn to play a musical instrument. You could become a skilled photographer or artist. You could build meaningful connections and relationships. The possibilities are genuinely endless. But none of that happens if you keep waiting for someday. Someday when you have more time. Someday when things calm down at work. Someday when the kids are older. Someday when you feel ready. Someday when you have more money. Someday when you have more energy. Someday is a comfortable lie we tell ourselves to avoid the discomfort of starting today. Someday lets us off the hook. Someday means we don't have to actually do anything right now. Someday preserves our self-image as someone who has big dreams and plans without requiring us to actually take action. But here's the brutal truth. For most people, someday never comes. They spend their entire lives waiting for the perfect moment that never arrives. They get to the end looking back on decades of could-haves and should-haves and wishes, wondering where all the time went, wondering why they never pursued what actually mattered to them. I don't want that to be you. I don't want you to wake up 10 years from now in the exact same place you are right now, still talking about the things you're going to do someday. Life is too short and too precious to waste on waiting. So here's what I want you to do right now. Not later. Not after you finish watching this. Right now. Pause for a moment and decide what your 1 hour is going to be dedicated to. What's the one thing that if you made real progress on it over the next year would genuinely change your life? Get absolutely clear on what that is. Don't overthink it. You already know what it is. It's that thing that keeps nagging at the back of your mind. That dream you've been pushing aside. That goal you've been saying you'll get to eventually. That version of yourself you know you're capable of becoming, but haven't committed to yet. Then decide when that hour is going to happen. I strongly suggest early morning before the rest of the world wakes up and starts making demands on your time. There's something powerful about working on your dreams while everyone else is still sleeping. It feels like you're getting away with something, like you're stealing time back from a world that constantly wants to take it from you. But maybe mornings genuinely don't work for your situation. Maybe you have young kids who wake up early. Maybe you work night shifts. Maybe your brain just doesn't function before noon. That's fine. The timing matters less than the consistency. Find the hour that you can actually protect and commit to it fully. Maybe it's during your lunch break. Maybe it's right after work before you let yourself collapse on the couch. Maybe it's late at night after everyone else goes to bed. It doesn't matter when. What matters is that it happens every single day without fail. Finally, commit. Not casually. Not with a bunch of conditions and exceptions and escape clauses attached. Commit fully to protecting that 1 hour every single day for the next 30 days. Just 30 days. That's all I'm after. 30 hours of your life invested in something that actually matters. Don't tell yourself you'll try. Don't say you'll do your best. Don't leave yourself wiggle room to back out when it gets hard. Decide right now that for the next 30 days, nothing short of a genuine emergency is going to stop you from showing up for that hour. Not tiredness, not busyness, not other people's demands. Nothing. After 30 days, look back at what you've accomplished. I promise you'll be surprised. You'll have made more progress than you thought possible. You'll have proven to yourself that you're capable of consistency. You'll have started to build momentum that makes continuing easier. More importantly, you'll have proven to yourself that you're not stuck. That you have more control over your life than you thought. That change is possible when you actually commit to it, instead of just wishing for it. Because that's what this is really about. It's not about the hour. It's about taking your power back from all the excuses and circumstances and other people's agendas that have been running your life. It's about deciding that your dreams and goals and the person you want to become are worth 60 minutes of focused effort every single day. 1 hour might not sound like much when you first hear it. It sounds almost too small to matter. But it's everything. It's the difference between spending another year wishing things were different and actually making them different. It's the difference between staying stuck exactly where you are and moving toward where you actually want to be. It's the difference between letting life happen to you and actively creating the life you want. So the question isn't whether 1 hour per day can change your life. I've lived it. I've seen it work in my own life, and in the lives of countless others who've taken this seriously. The question is whether you're ready to find out what becomes possible when you finally commit to it. When you finally stop making excuses and start making progress. When you finally decide that you're worth investing in. Your life can be different. Genuinely different, but only if you're willing to do something different. And that something different can start with just 1 hour today.